In suburban America in 1960, Alice and Celine are close friends and next-door neighbors who live traditional lifestyles with their successful husbands, Damien and Simon. One day, after Alice sees Celine leave, she sneaks into Celine's house and closes the curtains. Meanwhile, Celine goes to school to pick up her son Max and Alice's son Theo. On the way home, they happily sing together. When they return, Celine senses something is off and opens the curtains, only to discover that Alice has staged a surprise party for her birthday. During the party, Alice reminds her mother-in-law, Granny Jean, not to take her heart medication with alcohol. She then notices Max and Theo grabbing some peanut butter cookies and sneaking out. Alice follows them to the backyard but can't find them. Her anxiety rises because Theo is severely allergic to peanuts. With Celine's help, they find them, and Alice is relieved that Theo didn't eat any. That night, after the kids fall asleep, the two couples continue the party. Alice reveals that she wants to go back to having a career, but her husband Simon wants her to have another child. Alice gets upset and leaves the room. Celine finds her and encourages her to pursue her dreams, offering to help take care of Theo. The next day, Theo is ready for school. Celine informs Alice that Max is unwell and will be staying home for the day. Later, as Alice is trimming her roses in the garden, she notices Max on the edge of the balcony, trying to hang a birdhouse he made at school. Realizing the danger, Alice calls for Max to come down and tries to get through the hedge, but she can't. In a panic, Alice runs around the house to the front and rushes into Celine's house, racing upstairs. Celine follows behind, but it is too late. Max has already fallen off the balcony to his death. Celine holds Max in her arms, devastated by the loss. The following day, Simon tells Theo about Max's death, and Alice allows him to stay home from school. Later in the day, Alice finds Theo talking to Celine. Instinctively, Alice calls Theo back and tries to talk to Celine, but Celine ignores her. Alice feels guilty for not doing enough to save Max. Simon comforts her, saying it was just a terrible accident. Theo tells his parents that he left his toy bunny in Celine's backyard and cannot sleep without it. Alice agrees to let him sleep with them. At Max's funeral, Theo sees his bunny inside Max's coffin and starts crying and screaming. Simon scolds him and takes him out, but Alice questions why Celine would do this knowing the bunny belongs to Theo. After the funeral, Alice sees Celine's family taking her away. A month later, at Theo's school recital, Celine unexpectedly shows up. As she approaches Theo, she suddenly faints. Upon waking up, she apologizes to Alice for pushing her away, and the two reconcile. Afterwards, Celine invites Alice's family for dinner. When she goes to get Damien, they hear him refuse to join them and slam the door. Celine returns, gives Theo back his bunny, and apologizes to him. Theo asks Celine if she plans to have another baby, but Celine reveals she can no longer have children. Later, Celine tells Alice that Damien blames her for Max's death. Alice assures her that it was an accident and shares that she was in the car when her parents had an accident. She always felt guilty, thinking she could have done something. She underwent psychiatric treatment and was hospitalized, where she learned to separate grief from guilt. Alice advises Celine to do the same. However, Celine thinks their situations are not the same because she feels she failed to watch over Max. One day after Theo arrives home from school, Celine asks Alice if Theo can come to her house because she has a surprise for him. Unable to refuse, Alice agrees to let Theo go for an hour. Later, Alice notices Theo playing bubbles on the same balcony where Max fell. She panics and rushes through the hedges to stop Theo. Celine explains that she was there watching him, but Alice notices a change in Celine's expression as she quickly realizes that Alice could pass through the hedges for her own son. In the evening, Alice tells Simon she thinks Celine set up a situation to see if she could save Theo when she couldn't save Max, but Simon thinks Alice's idea is dangerous. At Theo's birthday party, Celine was invited because Theo wanted her there. During the party, Alice behaves very awkwardly towards Celine. When Celine brings Granny Jean some tea, Jean tells her it's not appropriate to see her at Theo's birthday. Celine asks Alice if she has done something wrong, and Alice confronts her about the balcony situation. Celine is shocked to hear the accusation and explains that spending time with Theo helps both of them, especially since Theo feels lonely without Max. Alice apologizes, expressing that she feels awful for being there for Theo but not for Max. After the party, while Alice is washing dishes, she sees Jean suddenly collapse and rushes over to check, only to find that she has died. Alice finds it suspicious that Jean suddenly died of a heart attack, considering she has been taking heart medication. When she notices the doctor's teacup, she asks him to perform an autopsy. Later, while tending to the garden, Alice finds Jean's medicine box and hides it in her nightstand. When Alice learns that the autopsy results reveal no trace of medication in Granny Jean's bloodstream, she becomes more suspicious because she clearly remembers Jean taking her medication that day. Suspecting that Celine might have replaced the drug with a placebo, Alice rushes home to find the medicine box, but she is shocked to discover it's missing. Later that day, Alice's family is invited to Celine's house for dinner. Theo is hungry, but Alice asks him not to eat anything until dinner. However, Celine crosses the boundary and suggests he check the kitchen for any food on the drain board. Suddenly, Theo comes out coughing because he has eaten a peanut cookie, causing his throat to close up. Alice and Simon rush him to the hospital immediately. Shortly after, Celine and Damien arrive, but Alice lashes out at Celine, blaming her for Theo's allergic reaction and asking her to leave. Simon takes Alice aside and asks her what is going on. Alice explains that Celine deliberately encouraged Theo to eat food he's allergic to. She also tells Simon about the autopsy results and mentions that Celine swapped Granny Jean's pills. Alice suspects Celine stole the pill box from her nightstand because only she has their house keys. Angered, Simon takes her to the car, shows her Jean's pillbox, and tells her he found it in the garden where Jean dropped it. This makes Simon think that Alice might be having another mental episode. Fortunately, Theo has stabilized and is expected to make a full recovery soon. The next day, Simon tells Alice that he will make an appointment to visit the psychiatrist as she is losing her mind before leaving for work. However, Alice is still suspicious and sneaks into Celine's house while she's out, heading to the basement to look for incriminating evidence. Just then, Celine returns because she forgot her wallet. She notices the basement door is open and goes to check, but she decides not to expose Alice and leaves. When Alice comes out from the basement, Celine suddenly shows up and confronts her. Alice accuses Celine of killing Granny Jean. Celine becomes very angry and orders her to leave. One day Alice brings Theo home, and he is happy to find a present from Celine at their doorstep, but Alice throws it back to Celine's door. After a while, Alice realizes Theo is not home and can't find him anywhere. She rushes to Celine's house and finds Theo on the balcony's edge, threatening to take his own life because he is distraught by their feud. However, Celine convinces him to get down as she approaches him and finds the right moment to pull him to safety. Alice and Celine then reconcile. Afterward, Simon tells Alice that he has found a house and they will move in 2 weeks. The following day, Alice and Celine meet for tea and apologize to each other. Alice informs Celine that they will be moving in 2 weeks. Later that day, when Damien returns home from work, Celine tells him about Alice's plans to move. Damien expresses that Celine has been clinging to Theo and forgotten about their late son. He warns Celine to leave Alice's family alone. That night, Celine sedates Damien in his sleep with chloroform and cuts his wrist, making it look like suicide. The next morning, Alice and Simon hear police sirens and rush outside, only to learn that Damien has committed suicide. They then bring Celine home to stay with them. Later that night, Alice goes to Celine's house to gather some belongings for her. Meanwhile, Celine takes Theo to her room and sedates him with chloroform. While Alice is gathering belongings, she finds the key to the pharmaceutical cabinet. She immediately runs to the basement and opens it, shocked to discover all her suspicions are true. Alice rushes home and finds Simon unconscious. She then goes upstairs to check on Theo. Suddenly, Celine attacks her and attempts to use chloroform on Alice. A struggle ensues, but Celine eventually manages to sedate Alice. She places Alice next to Simon and leaves the gas valve open. Celine then thoroughly cleans up the scene. Sometime later, the judge asks Theo if he is willing to accept Celine as his adoptive mother, and Theo agrees. Killing everyone who stood in her way, Celine now begins a new life with Theo.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our channel for more videos.